welcome to Rubbin Minds. My name is Hero Daniels, your guest host. Oh, well, the elections are officially over. At least 26 states have been declared, and the INEC has said that, of course, Adamawa and Kebbi will definitely have a rerun, and they've assured Nigerians that the rerun will be free, fair, and credible. But there are so many questions that are left unanswered. Number one question is, with a budget of 305 billion naira, how can we assess the performance of INEC? Did we really have a free, credible, and fair elections? Did INEC actually live up to expectation? And if I have any regrets right now is the fact that I'm not even a lawyer, because there are lots of election petitions, left, right, center, cases upon cases, and sues upon sues, counter sues, and thereabouts. What exactly is happening? There are so many inconsistencies, and a lot of people who have been disenfranchised are using that opportunity to, go to court and try to rectify these inconsistencies. Now, just to bring you up to speed, most Nigerians, international communities, non-governmental organizations, international and local observers of the 2023 general elections have expressed huge disappointment in the process that birthed new leaders to drive the country for the next 4 years. And of particular mention, the last gubernatorial elections in several states was actually trailed by a lot of ethnic and religious bigotry that has defined the elections in the country. And this calls for a call for concern, because it looks like we have a much more divided nation. What are we going to do about it? These are the conversations we want to have today. We want to review the entire elections. And joining me from Abuja, I have God Bless Otubore, who is a lecturer at University of Ibadan. He's also the global lead, Ready to Lead Africa. Hello, God Bless. Welcome to the show. Okay. While we're waiting for God Bless, many Nigerians, like I said earlier, have defended against ethnic and religious bigotry that has defined this election. And of course, God Bless, are you ready for us now? Welcome to the show. So, quick one. How would you assess...
Yes, I am ready. I've been here. I heard you at first.
Okay.
Can you see me?
Yes, of course. Clear, crystal clear. So how would you assess the last elections?
Well, it's the last election was a mix of a lot of realities, which wherever you sit, whatever the divide you are, there is one overarching position that everybody will take, and which is that it did not meet the yearnings and expectations of Nigerians at different levels. Of course, the most controversial was the presidential election, where INEC failed to upload polling unit results in real time. So that clearly was one of the biggest failures of the 25th February election, that eventually ended up declaring the APC candidate as the president-elect. Of course, you see, right at the collation center in Abuja, there was quite a lot of opposition to that particular, declaration. So generally, then you have that whole issue of voter disenfranchisement in certain areas, and polling not opening right on time. In many states, especially in the South and in the Southeast, which were, all part of, the opposition's claim. It is just a way to take away their votes. Then again, when you move on to the March 18th election, which is the most, I think also has its own controversy. Now you have the beavers working, and results are uploaded. IREV worked, but then you don't find a lot of guidelines that are not followed, and then of course the bigotry, the religious bigotry that characterized the campaigns in certain states, the wanton killing of Nigerians just because of election, and the fact that we saw governors who were acting as though they were there were kings across the country. It just made it look so unbelievable that having worked on this, process for the last 3 years or more, it wasn't the best result that a lot of us expected. But hey, like we said at the end of it all, while I was still on the verdict with, Mark Baird, Chamberlain, and Nelt, I said to Nigerians that democracy is not a 100-meter dash. It is not a marathon. It is a way of life. It is an intergenerational struggle for the way we want to be led. And because it is dependent on the actions of man and the following of guidelines and laid rules by seemingly educated people, it never finishes. So that is actually the only way that I believe we can find some level of inspiration to continue to do the work we're doing and continue to believe, in the process.
All right, God bless. We're going to go deeper into that conversation, but right now I want to connect with Mutiyat Oladejo. Mutiyat is actually the lecturer at the University of Ibadan. Welcome to the show. So, real quick, let's dive into it. We've seen what's happening. Of particular mention, let's talk about the elections at Adamawa State. Nigerians had a lot of hope. Some Nigerians, because of course not all Nigerians, some Nigerians had a lot of hope that yes, we're going to have our first elected governor in the person of Banini, Aishatu Ahmed. What would you say your view is on the Adamawa State election?
Thank you. Actually, we had high hopes that she was going to win the election until the following morning when we realized that it has become inconclusive. But notwithstanding, as a woman advocate who advocates for women's participation in politics, I still believe that it's a good attempt because given the fact that we are in Nigeria where the society is extremely patriarchal, it's been difficult for women to achieve certain positions generally in the Nigerian public space. And so for me, I see her emergence and how far she has gone to achieve that as a kind of encouragement for women to actually push further and pursue whatever their aspirations and ambitions are. However, at the end of the day, we still depend on what comes out from INEC's decision based on the decision of the voters anyway, because it is the voters that will determine what will happen at the end of the day. And I can't really say what the problem is exactly. I'm not going to say probably there is something shady happening anywhere. But then the fact that she went that far is a plus for women to celebrate. And it's something for us to use as an opportunity to push for that into the future.
All right. Now, how would you personally rate the elections generally? Presidential, gubernatorial, how would you rate the performance of the INEC? Did they perform well?
Yes, well, I was also a kind of collating officer, so I could say that when it comes to the processes went well, no doubt. But then, it's a process, and the process will always have its fault lines. And so, in every organization, once there will always be a kind of feedback evaluation. So I believe INEC will have a kind of feedback and evaluation of its process and see how they can improve on it, because it's a process. And once you call something a process, there will always be fault. And it's the fault that will go back into making decisions as to improve further into the future. And of course, let me say here that we are in Nigeria and we are Nigerians. Nigeria is a country that is trying to develop, that is trying to improve on what it has in the past. So I will say that this election is not different from the elections we've had in the past, so to speak, in terms of how it went well. And relatively, I may be wrong, but I could say that the election was actually crisis-free. Unlike the election we had in 2019, where there are a lot of assaults and, here and there, violence. But this one,
but there was violence. There was violence in this election. There were, in fact, ballot boxes were also snatched. In fact, we've seen a lot of violence.
Anyway, and that's why I said, but apart from snatching of ballot boxes, there are some issues that come up with elections that I believe we had bad experiences in 2015 and 2019. But I don't think this time we've had such bad experiences, because now I will say on the part of the politicians, I think they are beginning to stop seeing elections as a do or die affair. And they, relatively this time, a number of politicians chose the path of accepting the fact that they have been defeated, and they move on. So I would say that relatively, since politicians are beginning to have that mindset,
Right.
the rate of violence that comes with election has reduced relatively.
Oh, okay. I don't want it to look like I'm pressing you too much, but you did say that a lot of politicians have decided to move on with their loss. But I think we have more cases, more election petitions this year as opposed to the last elections that we had in Nigeria. We have more people going to courts, more people claiming that they've been disenfranchised, and more people claiming that they want to take back their mandate. In fact, let's even forget about all the other election petitions, presidential. Both Alhaji Atiku Abubakar of the PDP is in court, as well as Peter Obi of Labour Party is also in court. And for the very first time, a president was elected with less than 50% of the total votes. And that sort of shows extreme division. So how do you think we can move forward with this situation? Because we need one nation to actually move forward.
Yeah, the pattern is clear enough, because if you have if you understand how games are played anyway, you will see that Labour Party has 6 million plus votes, PDP has 6 million plus votes, and APC has 6 million plus votes. That shows that it is quite competitive. And that is what comes with elections. That's what comes with democracy. And it also even shows a pattern that our democracy in Nigeria is improving. Because if we had had a situation where a party dominates, we would say that there is a kind of oppression. We would say there are things that affect voters from participating in elections. But then you have a situation where a party has 8 million, 6 million, 6 million. Then you will see that the pattern is clear enough for us to say that we still had a free and fair election where voters had the opportunity to make their choices. Okay. Because it also depends on the voters. Voters have decided to make their choices. Now, if we are to go by the fact that the issues we have as Nigerians in terms of ethnicity and religion, we could begin to adduce various reasons why one has 8 million, the other has 6 million, the other has 6 million. Yes. Right. As Nigerians, we can actually say these are the reasons why this voting pattern went this way. But the fact that the presidential candidates that lose in the election went to court, they also have the right to go to court anyway. But I think I had one of the candidates saying the reason why he went to court is not even to challenge the result of the election, but to challenge the process. I'm also learning. I want to see what we are going to, how the process is going to be challenged. Because like I said earlier on, it is very obvious from the voting pattern that people made their decisions and made their choices, and it's reflected. And that's why one of the candidates said he's not contesting the result of the election, but he's contesting the process.
Thank you, Matthias.
And then they have the right to go to court, and so we are all Nigerian citizens. It is stated in the Constitution.
100%, they do have the right to go to courts. Quickly, God bless. What would you say about this third force phenomenon? Because this is the very first time we're experiencing this huge amount of support for a third force. Beyond the individual and the party involved, what does this mean moving forward in our national democracy?
Quite a lot of statements that the guest, the lecturer, has said on this show that I'm finding it difficult to just understand. But I think I'll just okay. So I don't think we should let it just slide. So this was a very violent election, for whatever way. Look, in Akwa Ibom alone, our observers that were deployed on the field, because we deployed across the 774 local governments in the country, and violence was reported almost everywhere. People died in Akwa Ibom. People died in Lagos. People died in Port Harcourt. People died in Rivers. People died in communities. People were disenfranchised. Ballot boxes were snatched and broken. We saw them in real time. They were not reported. They were not just reported. We have evidence. So to say the election was not violent, I don't think that's great. And then to also now say that the process went well, and then just no, clearly no. So on the 25th, we had huge logistical challenges. You can't have the polls opening at 8:30, and by 2, people haven't voted. You can't have that. Election, there was nowhere in the Electoral Act where we said voting should go on till the night. So those things happen. And we understand, and we've spoken to INEC about it, and our responsibility to INEC is one of accountability and partnership, and that's what we've done. That's what we've continued to do. So I would like for us to really, if we don't say where we have gone wrong, we cannot make progress. So we cannot say, oh, we're developing democracy, and then we can cherry pick what we want to say. How we move forward in terms of our democracy and the whole issue of third force, I'm not a thinker in whether you have first force or second force or third force. If I had my way, and if I was going to advise, I would switch to the two-party system, just the way you have it in the United States. Democrats, Republicans. If you're in power, we know you're in power. If you're not in power, you know you're playing opposition. Because the only reason why you have very weak opposition in multi-party democracies is because what you then have is fragmented opposition that is incapable of matching the might of the power of the party in office. And that literally affects the capacity of the opposition to hold the party in office accountable. And that is actually a big issue. That is why, when you look at the American system and you see power move from both the Democrats to Republicans, you see Republicans probably hold the House now. Democrats have the Senate, then you have Democrats in the White House. The possibility of having maybe the Republicans in the White House and then maybe Democrats hold the Senate. That is how power play works. Fragmented oppositions with their small enclaves cannot work and hold the party in power in the presidential system very accountable very well. It only works when you have a parliamentary system where smaller parties then begin to form coalitions to be able to create a government. But in the presidential system, where you have multi-party democracy, and then you have all these smaller parties, right now we have 18 political parties, right? So. Right. For me, I'll just say the whole third force conversation, I would want the third force conversation. It's great for representation, but hey, if I have my way, I just said my solution. But let's continue to move ahead. Let's continue to respect the guidelines. Let's continue to play by the rules of democracy so that people don't get disillusioned about the process. Go ahead. It seems like you want to say something.
Okay, God bless. Whatever side of the divide anybody belongs to, whether you supported the APC, the PDP, or the Labour Party, one thing is common. A lot of people need to heal after these elections. Like I said earlier on in my opening speech, the gubernatorial elections, we saw that it was really amongst ethnic lines, especially with cases that came up in Lagos. But one thing is for sure, we are all Nigerians, and a lot of people are having post-election traumatic disorder, if that's a thing, right? We're now seeing that the elections are over, but the day-to-day interaction between one particular tribe and another particular tribe has been, sort of mad. So real quickly, we're out of time. How do you think that everybody can come together and heal, and how can we preach the message of one Nigeria? God bless.
That's a fantastic question, and I think we all should be responding to it with the best intention and grace possible. The best way to heal, which is what the governor of Lagos State did, is to say, look, elections have come and gone. Let us continue to work together. Let's build coalition. Let's reach out. And I remember I was saying on this same channel and other media houses that have invited me, I said, look, this is the time for us to do both the real work and the optical work. The optical work is that we must be seen as reaching out, whether cosmetic or just for the optics. It's necessary right now. We need to see Sanwo-Olu and Ndigbo together. We need to see the Yoruba kings and the Ezes together. We need to see the Femis and the Chukudis having a drink. We need to see the Omoniles. We need to see the guys under the bridge with Igbo brothers and sisters coming together, right? These are optical things. These are things we can do for optics that can have very, very, impactful resonance at the, at the lower base.
All right.
The next thing we must now do is that we must now call those who speak for candidates, those who speak for leaders. They must stop what they are currently doing. And I said that in our press conference. I named names. I called them out. People like former aviation minister, Femi Fani-Kayode. They have to understand that they are leaders and we look up to them. People like Bayo Onanuga. They have to understand that we're young people and we look up to them. I have no side in this battle. I am on the Nigerian side. I mean, if you see the news is that the guy who played the hero, the guy who is regarded as the hero from the from Hotel Rwanda, that was depicted in the movie Hotel Rwanda because of the genocide, has just been freed after being convicted for 25 years 2 years ago. Why was he convicted? Because they went back to check a lot of things and what a view. But let's go back to even what the conversation is the Rwanda genocide happened because of things like this. So at the end of the day, the people who are representing governors and people who are speaking for political party leaders, the Bayo Onanuga who is speaking for the president-elect right now, cannot be seen as the one who is pushing these narratives on Twitter and on social media. Sir, I am begging you. I don't know what your thinking is. I understand that emotions are high. But the elections have been concluded for now.
We're out of time.
People have gone to court.
Your point is...
this whole tribal profiling and people and calling out...
I understand that you're very emotional about this.
I'm begging you, please.
I understand that you're very emotional about this. God bless. Thank you very much. I understand you're very emotional about this, but I believe that you have delivered your message. And thank you very much for coming on the program. Mutiat, thank you so very much for coming. Welcome back to the show. This is Rubbin Minds. Before the break, we were talking about the elections. We're reviewing the entire process, how much INEC has performed, what the assessment is, and where we are right now as Nigerians. If you go to America, there's always something called the American dream, where the son or daughter of nobody can become anybody. And if you translate it down to Nigeria, there is the Nigerian dream where if you work hard enough, despite all of the challenges, you can actually make it in life. And we cannot have the Nigerian dream if we do not have a thriving economy and an economy that supports individuals, that supports SMEs, that supports all the people that ordinarily would not have the opportunity. And most of that kind of environment can only be created if we have a very stable political state. That's not even what we want to talk about right now. That's just a recap of what happened in the last segment. We want to talk about the roadmap to advancing equity in Nigerian politics. The statistics are not nice. We believe in a society where women and men are given equal opportunities and equal rights. And with the last elections, out of the 423 legislative seats declared by the electoral body after the February 25th presidential and National Assembly polls, men hold about 408 seats, representing about 96.5%, while only 15 are held by women, which represents only 3.5%, a very, very infinitesimal figure. Additionally, of the elected legislators, men hold about 98 out of 109 Senate seats and 325 out of the 360 House of Representatives seats, won by 7 and 8 parties respectively. Also, women hold only 2 seats in the Senate and 13 seats in the House of Representatives. Now, that is not a very encouraging figure, and we want to sort of see how we can move these statistics up, hopefully in the next election. Joining me right now, I have with me the founder and CEO elect her, Ibijoke Faborede. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Iro. Thank you so much.
So, the statistics are not looking pretty. How do you feel about that?
Honestly, I think it's not a great time to be a woman in Nigeria. I kind of feel, I mean, a lot of people are obviously very disappointed, at the patterns that we keep seeing. And also just because it's not very clear that women's issues are not on the top burner. But, we've seen some incremental change. We've seen a lot of non-conventional people. We've seen a lot of private sector stakeholders, be more interested in this space. So we do hope that we're going to see a lot of positives going forward. While we do not have the numbers that we want in the National Assembly and State Assembly, we believe that, this is the time to negotiate power for women to ensure that we can hold the president-elect to his manifesto, which is ensuring that, it keeps to the 35% required recommendations on women's representation in the national gender policy. And I think that's the next step. So I like to be very pragmatic. The numbers are not looking good, but for me, it's where do we go from here? I don't want to sulk because I'm not happy about it. But the truth is that time is going. Women are not waiting. Women comprise over half of the population. Women control over 40% of, microeconomic businesses in Nigeria. So we can't just wait. What we need to take is the silver lining from this and then negotiate power from there upwards, yeah.
Okay, I like the fact you said negotiate power, 35% according to the president-elect. Now, this percentage zoning is something that you would find not just in the political parties, but across space. We have political parties saying, okay, if you're getting a form as a woman, we're going to give you a discount, sometimes free forms and all of that. And after all of the percentages allotted, you now see that men still go ahead to occupy those positions that the political parties have said we're going to zone this particular percentage to. How do you think you can truly negotiate this power?
I think, first of all, it's important to establish that there's a lot of tokenistic approach going on, whether the executive, at the legislative, or, just simply at the party level. We haven't gotten to a place where we understand the importance of equity in Nigeria. And I always tell people this, my job as the founder of Electa, on this mission really is to help people understand that there are socioeconomic implications when you exclude a certain demography in any economy, which means that you can have balanced decisions, you can have balanced policy outcomes, you can have balanced economic outcomes, and that essentially affects everyone. And so that's what I do when I speak with people, saying, look, this is not about women. And so let's get to the table. If we're talking about, a shift in the socioeconomic outlook of Nigeria, if we're talking about, improving our microeconomy and our macroeconomy, if we're talking about alleviating poverty, if we're talking about just having a proper economic agenda and getting Nigeria out of this mess or the retrogression that we're experiencing, then we need to ensure that all of society is reflected in decision-making and policy outlook. And I think for me, that's where this comes to play. Now, how do we negotiate power for women? So my organization, Electa, we are releasing a roadmap, and we call it a roadmap because it's supposed to be a guide. We had to do a lot of reflective thinking and a lot of deep research, evidence-based research, going into election, and of course, from the outlook of the election, saying, where do we go from here? What do we need to do? But we understand that, every politician comes to office, they have their self-agenda, they have the party agenda, they want to look good, you understand? And you have just 4 years. And so we need to go from the non-conventional, the conventional way of thinking to the non-conventional way of thinking, saying, how do we meet them halfway? How do we create incentives? How do we make this a top agenda for the politicians who are here to, who really have a short window to make an impact or to look good. And so what we've done with this document is, a three-pronged approach, which is short-term, immediate over the next fiscal year, medium term, which is 2 to 3 years, and then longer term, which is 4 to 5 years. And what we've done is, what are the quick wins? What are the quick wins that we can bring to play for those politicians, but for women as well? Because again, we must understand that
politics is a game of negotiation. And like I said, I like to run a very pragmatic organization. I don't like the numbers, I don't like the outlook. And there's some things, unfortunately, that we need to compromise on and negotiate so that we can get women, because we cannot fix the system from the outside. It's so important that we get in there to really project the changes that we want. So some of the short-term recommendations include, getting women on the transition committees of the new administration, both at the presidential level and at the governor-select level, ensuring that we as an organization and bring it together all the players in the space from the private and public sector to carefully craft and identify female technocrats intergenerationally that can be part of the administration. So we're currently putting a list together, profiling them, so that when you go and lobby, you're going with something. Right. I think the world has evolved past, let's do this, women was we know. Again, is what are we asking? What do we want? What are we bringing? So I believe that, if you don't give me a seat at the table, I will bring my chair and bring 1,000 more chairs with it. And that's what we're trying to do with this. So from the short to the medium to the long term. Longer term, medium term has to do with reintroducing the reception bill, but bringing in men as allies, bringing in men to really do a postmortem on that bill. I mean, partnering with current legislators, of course, and saying, look, what were the main issues? Why was this rejected? What needs to change? And this takes me to a conversation I had with President Banda during the election. And she said, look, as a woman that's been in politics for so long, I've learned the art of negotiation and compromise. There was a bill where they were trying to get more women elected in Malawi as well before, when she was government. And she realized that it was just one language and the men had a problem. So they had to make sure it was a universal language to ensure that it was more about gender. So that if at any point men are excluded, they can also benefit from that as well. And that was how she got the buy-in from it. And I think we're also learning from what is happening in these other climes as well, saying, okay, we know that this is a very good agenda. The reception bill was very clear. We want to get women, elected, but the reality is it was woefully rejected on the floor of the National Assembly. So where do we go from here? And I think these are some of the very practical things we're trying to do. Also ensuring that there's now a better synergy between the private and public sector, because a lot of private sector players are apolitical. But, Nigeria runs a very strong political economy. You can't separate politics from the economy, because the legislators and the National Assembly are the ones that drive policy that promotes ease of doing business, that promotes the business outlook. So at the end of the day, if they are not involved as stakeholders, as custodians, not necessarily to get partisan, we're going to keep seeing those gaps. But also, when you look at the consuming population, even the private sector needs to look at that. Women, when it comes to their income, so the economic analyses are there. And I think that for us, is what we're trying to do with this roadmap is to say, look, this women's issue is everyone's issues. This is about Nigeria's survival. So where do we go from here? In the short term, what can we do? How can we hold ourselves accountable? How can we ensure that any government that's been legally certified to be in power, how do we work with them without being partisan to say, look, this is something you can leverage on. This is something that you can pin into the agenda. This is something that you can get quick wins for. And I think that benefits all of society, at large. So that's essentially what we're trying to do with this report.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, there's something that bothers me. I mean, traditionally, you'd see that Africa, Nigeria, has been a very patriarchal society. Men are being seen as the more natural-born leaders. But if we look at it intrinsically, we've seen that our mothers in our homes have played the leadership position and women really run the homes, right? And you've seen a lot of entrepreneurial mothers, people that go out of their comfort zone to actually take care of the entire family. And I know I don't just speak for myself, I speak for a lot of people who have seen women, display this leadership in several spheres and in several definitions. Now, how do you think we can change the conversation to, okay, women are not necessarily looked upon as natural-born leaders, to moving the conversation to, yes, my mother, even when things were bad, went out of her way to make sure that the entire family feeds. So I should see my mother as a natural-born leader. So how do you think we can sort of have this orientation, in this patriarchal society, so that eventually when we see a woman on the ballot box, we don't think, oh, she's a woman first. We think, oh, she's competent.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's a question that I often like ponder about, but it's one I'm very excited about as well. And I'll tell you why. There's an interesting project we're working about, which is just about like, changing the historical narration of women, because you know that oral transmission sometimes can play a great danger because from one custodian to the other, some things tend to get lost in translation. Historical oversights have played such a detrimental factor to this particular case. Even women in the past, we had a lot of strong women pre-independence that played very pivotal role in the socioeconomic development of pre-independent Nigeria, but also after independence as well. And most times they're often omitted, or their stories are not even told in the positive light. Now, there's something you call social conditioning, and that happens to a lot of people. If you put a lot of, people in the room, young people in the room, let's even talk about, people like young cousins, young nieces, and you ask them, who do you see as a leader? Most of them wouldn't really point to a lady, and that's what you call stereotyping and social conditioning. So there's a lot that needs to change. There's a lot of mindset reorientation. There's a continuous education that we need to really ensure that every stakeholder prioritizes. But one thing I also want to say is that for my generation, for people like you and I, there's a pattern, and the pattern is the pattern of the lack of resilience. And I say that because sometimes we start issues, but we don't push it to the last mile. That's why you see a lot of impunity in the system. Politicians understand that. They just say, okay, let them shout, they calm down later. We need to be a population, where, because of our lived experiences, we're essentially constantly demanding for what we want, and regardless of the emotional attachment or the sentimental attachment to issues, we ensure that we always get a seat at a table. Now, for me, I feel like the way to shift the narrative and move, the conversation of women being just natural leaders to actually being, to share the lived experiences of women, based on our individual stories, is to ensure that number one is we're part of governance, to ensure that behavioral change communication is something that becomes an everyday thing. To ensure that even at the basic education level, we begin to start reorientating people. There's something one of my professors says, and that's the most detrimental form of poverty in Nigeria is mindset poverty that can destroy and even the most learned population. So we must get to a place where we start reorientation. And I think that the entertainment industry has such a very pivotal role to play, because the power of storytelling is one that transcends generation, is one that mirrors the lived experiences of people. And that's why, for me, the work that we, for example, do within our arts and special projects, where we use fashion, storytelling, theme, drama to really reorientate people, is very pivotal. And I think it's what I'm going to encourage people to do more. Also, using non-conventional approach is very important as well. And so for me, I also think we need to get to a place where we're not forcing people to understand the role of women in society. I think it's a loss for everyone, essentially. And I think that sometimes society needs to hit rock bottom before they have that reality check. And I think we have it right now, because the economy is a mess, but also some instrumental timelines, I've played out in the past 3-4 years. We've seen the NSAS protest, and we saw the very pivotal role that women played as the infrastructure to back that campaign, with resources and with just innovation, innovative methods. And today we're very thankful to the ladies of the Feminist Coalition. Second of all is COVID around the world. You saw women take very human-centric approach to governance, as opposed to taking very capitalistic approach to governance. And I think that has been very instrumental. So there's a lot that we can definitely play on. And I think that eventually that's really going to shift it. But there's an incremental change.
Thank you.
I don't like to be pessimistic. I like to pick the silver lining and run with it. I also think that there's a lot at stake. One thing I like about the current political environment is, even though it's very gloomy, and you mentioned something that Nigeria needs healing, there is a lot to take from this. The dynamics have shifted. there is a paradigm shift that we need to ride on. And I think that it's the best time for us to negotiate for women because, number one, women are one of the most powerful voting blocs in this country. So
100%.
we need essentially to start negotiating power for women. Yeah.
We're out of time. We're out of time. But thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.
And definitely, there are lots of stereotypes that needs to be changed. And for you watching it, please, anytime you're driving and you see somebody not driving well, and then you look at the person and the driver is a woman, please don't go, now woman. No. That's not nice. Right, that's not nice. Thank you very much for coming to the program. We appreciate you. Rubbin Minds continues after this break. Welcome back. This is Rubbin Minds. We've been having interesting conversations around the elections, post-elections. And I think this holy month is just the perfect month to give us the much required healing that we need in this nation. It is Ramadan, the holy month of Ramadan, etiquettes and importance. So I'm going to have this very sober conversation with the director, Daru Dawawa Takwa Islamic Center in Lagos, Ustaz Lukman Abdul Wahab. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right. I know that there are 5 pillars of Islam, and fasting is a very important pillar. How important is fasting to our spiritual well-being?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. Firstly, we'll give thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has given us another opportunity to witness this season. If we look at events around us, 2019, the issue of COVID has allowed so many of us not to have the necessary and required interaction in the month of Ramadan. But this time around, COVID is gone. We are with post-election, whatever we have. But then the coming of Ramadan has brought so many people together again for the first time, even after the election trauma and complaints and petitions and whatever we all have based on our interests and perception to things. Ramadan, as a name, is one of the Islamic months. There are 12 of them. Ramadan is the 9th month of the Islamic calendar. And of course, Ramadan got its name from the word Ramd, which means to burn. So it is expected that in the month of Ramadan, our sins are being burned as a result of the fact that Muslims are encouraged to engage in more righteous activities, like spending, showing love to others. And Ramadan as an important month, I would like to quote a scholar who wrote a book, Islam at the Crossroad. He depicted Islam, which is a religion, and that person that practices Islam is called a Muslim. He depicted both of them as 2 people traveling. Religion is defined, it's from God, so it will continue to move. Muslim is that person that practices the religion. Sometimes he's energetic, sometimes he's down, sometimes he's righteous, sometimes he goes the other way. Both of them had reasons to move on a journey. Islam, as a religion, kept going. And whenever a Muslim follows up, he would relax. And at a particular time, they got to a 3-point junction. Islam went the right way. Muslim woke up from his slumber just to catch up. On getting to the 3-point junction, he went leftward. And that is why today you see some Muslims doing exactly opposite what Islam has brought. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought this month of Ramadan to be like a reunion for Muslims. And that is why this month you see people who have left so many things they should be doing. They are back at it. As a matter of fact, I had a colleague I spoke with last week at work. Of course, he's a Muslim, but then he drinks. He told me, I'm on vacation. I was like, which vacation? I'm not on leave, we're on job. And what are you talking about? He said, drinking now has to stop. I said, why? Because Ramadan is here. That is the very first thing. Secondly, as sort of the importance of this month of Ramadan is what you see about people and their intention. Before now, the African setting, the Nigerian factor, if you go to a mosque or a place of worship and you see people bringing food, for generous acts, you tend to query it, like, are we safe? But then in this month of Ramadan, you visit places of worship, people have brought things for people to break their fast, and nobody is querying what they have. Try it after that month, and you see a lot of query, like, this is for what, and what are we trying to achieve? And that's another key thing. Furthermore, on this importance of this Ramadan, it has united so many people. Like in my area, in my place of work, for instance, so many people had their party, the last election, they had their affiliations. which you cannot deny anybody of. But this time around, as Ramadan has come, where everybody has to pray together, we have to do so many things together. So gradually, the post-election issues that we have, they are gradually going up, even though we still have so many petitions, and of course, we hope that INEC and other necessary bodies involved will do the right way, and that tells us the importance of the month of Ramadan.
That is very profound. If there's anything I know, it's the fact that, like you said, Ramadan brings people together. And I know you might not know this, but even people that are not of the Muslim faith, because of the soberness the month comes with, it sort of transfers that energy towards them, that they also feel a need, to do the right thing. They feel a need to also reflect on their own lives, So I think it also transcends beyond just Muslims and Islam, people that practice Islam, Some Christians also just sort of, imbibe all of those qualities as a result of the energies transmitted.
Yeah.
That being said, how do you think as a nation we can leverage on this sober reflection and the peace that Ramadan brings?
Good. So the month of Ramadan, as we have seen, just like you said, my boss happens to be a Christian, and I observe, since the month of Ramadan has started, we do job distribution. This time around, he has been very lenient. And when they ask him, say, don't stress him, he is fasting. And that is respecting people for their values, for who they are. And that's another very great thing the month has brought. We need to know people, respect them for who they are, and with that, we'll live in peace. That is the very first thing. Secondly, as part of those things Ramadan has brought, is that you observe that people all over the world, Muslims and even those who are not Muslims alike, you see people greeting you in the month of Ramadan. Even as a matter of fact, you see some other people from other faiths joining you to do some things. And that tells us, or that's one of the ways Ramadan has come to unify us. Another thing which it has brought, which is very key, is the fact that when you see somebody in the month of Ramadan, you say Ramadan Mubarak, meaning I wish you a blessed month. This sign of blessing, there is nobody that wants to be deprived of the word blessing, to the extent that today it has become like a normal thing, a household thing. Even for those who are not Muslims, they say Salaam Alaikum because it's a normal thing. And we must know that, we must respect that. Finally, on this issue of Ramadan, there was once a time somebody died during the life of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And while they were bringing the corpse, the Prophet stood up, other companions. It was not an adherent of his faith. I must clarify that. The Prophet stood up. The companions who were with him sat down. And when they left, they wondered, and somebody asked, why did you stand? The Prophet said, was that not a soul from God? That means that all souls deserve to be respected. And that was why Allah says in Surah Isra, Allah says, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. Truly, Allah has honored every soul of man. So it's a pity today where you see people, especially in this part of the world, where our souls are not so, they are not being cared for. They're not being cared for, all in the name of personal interest.
Right.
And that is another thing we must look beyond. As a person, election, we see things happening other places in the world. After election, after petitions, whenever things have been resolved, everybody needs to come back as one, the so-called opposition, because they have some ideas which they feel they want to materialize if they eventually get in. Right. So it doesn't cost anything for the ruling party to bring in people all together, submit your ideas. Let us look at moving the nation forward. And that's another thing we can achieve through this month of Ramadan.
Okay. Now, for the people that are not fasting, the non-Muslims,
okay,
how do you think that they can respect the space of the people observing the holy month? Take, for example, either via social media or in the workplace. I mean, you're fasting and I bring a big bowl of food and start eating in front of you. That's some sort of temptation to you. I'm just using that as an example, right? So how do you think the non-Muslims can, help their Muslim brothers in making sure that they keep to the mission, which is, connecting to Allah, much more during this holy months? How can we respect that space?
Yes, that is very important, just like you have said. Importantly, you see, it boils down to respecting our values. It is very key. Like it happens in my own area. When it is time for Ramadan like this, there was, I think it happened about 2 days ago when we started Ramadan, specifically in my area. I saw a girl, she was eating in the public, of course, enabled to myself. The mother happens to be a Christian. She walked and said, oh, go inside, go and eat. I understand the fact that that's the respect. That, okay, you can go inside and do that. That is the first thing. Secondly is that because you are fasting, is another thing. It doesn't disturb others from, those that are not fasting. They are permitted to eat. By the time we have this concept that you are doing your things, does not necessarily mean that, okay, the other part of the time where you are not fasting, some other people too are fasting. And nobody is complaining that you are eating. So we must balance these things. What is not good is that you do this intentionally to, tempt the other person. That is where the problem is. But on a normal day, you go to conferences, it is meal time, it is dinner. People take what they should take. And it is for you who is fasting to know that you have a reason, you have faced Allah with your fast. Some other people who are not doing such, you do not need to condemn them. Rather, they also do not need to condemn you. Everybody stays on his line and will do other things together without necessarily disturbing one another.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming on the program. And to you watching, it's the holy months. Let us leverage on the peace and the blessings that the holy months brings to us, irrespective of our faiths. It's been an interesting time here on Rubbin Minds. My name is Hero Daniels. Until next time, it's goodbye.